Hello, and welcome to Climate Agents, Agents of Change, the podcast where we talk to people about what they think about climate change and why they think that. This is to encourage more people to have conversations about climate change, to seek out more information about it, and just to share our thoughts and feelings about it. To me, it's a subject that isn't talked about enough. So today we have Dick Coyne with us well, you can tell more about where you're from and what you'd like people to know. So if you could introduce yourself, Dick, that'd be great.
Yes, well, I'm co-chair with my daughter, Cassandra Sweeney, for Northeast Ohio Climate Reality Project. I'm also involved with Green Energy Ohio, Third Act, Sierra Club, Citizens Climate Lobby, Master Gardeners, Geauga County, and I mean those are the environmental organizations I'm involved in, and then Arthur Holden Leadership Institute and Hershey Montessori School, where I can work a little bit with younger people. And but most of my time is spent with NEOCRP, the Climate Reality Project, and with the Master Gardeners. And our goals, both organizations, all of these organizations, is education. In some cases, in all of the environmental organization cases, it's focused on climate. Master Gardeners, we focus on climate once in a while, but it's a broader scope because we focus on gardening and environment. So
Mhm.
um, we also work on getting people out to vote. And one of our major focuses is supporting electrification through the Inflation Reduction Act. And we also reach out to politicians to try and get measures passed that will help us combat climate change.
Um, well, that's a lot. Do you have time for daily life?
I wonder that about you because I know I mean, the time you spend on this, and I want to compliment you on what you're doing because opening the conversation, getting people to talk about climate change and learn about it is probably the primary way of us solving this problem.
Well, that's great because I hope I'm offering something unique because so many of the podcasts I listen to are all about experts. They talk to climate scientists or they, try to communicate the science to everyone, and which I try to do too. But I think it's important for just regular people to talk about what's happening and, what are we doing about it or why aren't we doing something about it? Yeah.
I totally agree. I took the Climate Reality Project training in 2013, and my background is chemical engineering. So I've been approaching climate change from a science standpoint for years. And when Al Gore got up and said, talking about the science isn't working, what works is personal stories.
Hmm.
And it took me a while to accept that reality, but it is a reality. People get snowed by the science, and it curtails their ability to take action, unfortunately.
Hmm. That's interesting. I don't know. I guess I feel both. I feel the personal stories definitely connect to people, but also I think that some of the science concepts would help people not to be fooled by the deniers, by all the fake information that comes out from the denier campaign. If they knew enough about just enough to know the basics of climate science, then they'd be more unassailable in what they.
Yeah. And when I interact with people one on one, a lot of times I go back to the science. I mean, because that's the basis of our knowledge. There's no question about it. Um, Now, what's happening on the news and tying that into the science is very important. So believe me, I still feel that people should understand the science, and it should be enough to get them motivated to take action. Oftentimes it isn't. And I think that's where the stories kind of maybe hopefully push them over the point where they can start taking action.
Hmm. Well, it's hard to know for someone what to do. So maybe they become aware that it's a very serious concern and they want to do something about it. But they look around and they say, I don't know if I'm part of that group, or I don't know if I can. There's just so many things. There's no easy entry into here's what you do. Like a young woman told me she joined the military the day after 9/11. She was so motivated. And that was just one boom, something action you can do, and it sets the course for what you're doing. But
Yes.
we don't have an analogy to that for climate change.
Mm. Yeah, there is no one big event. It's kind of crept up on us slowly.
Mm,
So, but the evidence is so strong now. I mean, 5 years ago, you didn't see as much as you see on TV now, and you didn't have as many electric cars available. Heat pumps weren't a big thing, and so I mean, today, boy, there's all kinds of evidence that we are causing the problem, and there's all kinds of evidence that we have the technologies to solve it.
mm. So that's what I would ask. If someone were just to ask you, what do you think about climate change? What would you say?
I think it is the existential threat to the future of life on Earth, not just us humans, but the extinctions that are taking place now. The sixth great extinction is already in progress, and it's evident all around us. I mean, every source of science is showing that we are causing this problem, and it's getting worse. So it's real. Yeah, I've got buttons. It's real. It's us. And stop burning fossil fuels. Those are the buttons and bracelets that I have had made.
Hmm. Hmm. And what kind of activities does the NEOCR, wait a minute, Climate Reality Project, CRP, NEOCR, Northeast Ohio Climate Reality Project, what kind of activities do they do?
Well, we work on politicians. We had a virtual fly-in with Senator Portman,
Hmm.
advocate some voting bills and some environmental bills. We meet virtually once a month. We've got about 170 members. And right now, we're putting together a display, a booth in support of electrification and in support of the Inflation Reduction Act and the BIL. And I've got 8 banners and some venues that we're going to be setting up the booth at, like the Geauga County Fair. John's Country Nursery has a Bee Fest in September, Earth Day events. I'm hoping to get set up at some of those events,
Mhm.
and seeking venues from each of the organizations I'm involved with, well, Green Energy Ohio, Third Act, CCL, um, CCL being the Citizens Climate Lobby. Also through the Third Act, one of their members, and she's also a member of CRP, we're putting together factoids about the Inflation Reduction Act. And again, the whole objective is to educate people on how they can help fight climate change by electrifying their lives, their transportation, their homes, and save money at the same time. The Inflation Reduction Act allows people to save even more money, but most of these technologies, even without the government funding, they save money. Now, with the government funding, I'm hoping it will get lower income people, give them the ability to take advantage of these electrification technologies, because we want the transition to electrification to be equitable. It's not just something for rich people who can afford it. It's going to be for everybody, hopefully.
Hmm. I hope that helps. I hope it's soon enough. I hope it's enough. Sometimes I worry about that because it feels like we're behind and we're from where we should be in order to address this huge interconnected issue.
We are definitely behind. Uh, had we started electrifying 20 years ago or so, when it became quite evident we were causing this, it would be easier and our future would look better.
Well, you,
But we are, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. Well, you and I were promised that as kids, right? Do you remember when we were kids in elementary school? It was like you're going to have electric cars, you're going to have, you know, flying cars. You're going to have. We were promised a paperless society. We were promised so many things, and then
Yeah,
we'd go year after year, like, where are the electric cars? Why aren't they here yet?
well, they're here now. So now the electricity isn't so cheap, they won't even meter it. They were also saying that with atomic energy, it was going to be so cheap they weren't even going to bill us anymore. But that didn't happen either. Um, but still, we do not have to give up our quote standard of living to fight climate change. We don't have to live in caves in the dark. We have the technologies to save the climate and maintain a standard of living. At least I still believe that. Now, are we behind achieving that goal? Yes, we are. And Green Energy Ohio just reviewed a book called I Want a Better Catastrophe. And it was a little depressing because some of the scientists are pointing out that we have exceeded some very critical tipping points, and it's going to become more and more difficult to solve this problem uh, the longer we delay taking action. But we still have the opportunity, and we still need to push ahead, and we still need to educate people to electrify.
I've read that book. It's one of my favorite books. I I and it talks about, accepting what maybe can't be saved at this point, but also creating a softer landing place or a higher landing place than
Yes,
going all the way, all the way to social collapse or ecological devastation. So we can and I think part of that is organizing people together in neighborhoods so that we have more of a resilience, climate resilience in our communities.
I think building community is very important. And I think the neighbor effect is very important. I mean, I put on solar panels, I talk to my neighbor, I share the economics.
Hmm.
Same thing with my daughter and my neighbor and my daughter. They have my daughter has electric car and solar panels. The neighbor has solar panels. And just like I said, like you're doing, you're communicating, you're talking with people, you're getting people to talk about it.
Mhm.
And the more people know, hopefully the more that they'll take action and help resolve this.
Mhm. So just to summarize what I've heard, you are aware of, so if I what you thought about climate change, and why. The why sounds like you're pretty aware of the science and pretty aware of the latest information about the alternative energy. And so for that reason, you hold out some hope toward that we have the technology necessary to mm, either solve it or create a better landing place. And so I guess, what advice would you give other people for if they really didn't realize that this is such an issue? If they really didn't realize that or why is it an emergency now?
Well, it was an emergency at least a decade ago.
Oh.
We know that, you know that. It's more of an, and I agree with you. We're not going to quote solve climate change. We're not going to take the climate back to the 1950s or something. But hopefully we will slow the effects down and eventually reverse it. As you said, a softer landing. I mean, the severe weather effects are going to continue. They're going to get worse. The rising sea levels are going to continue. We're going to have mass migrations. These are already baked into what is going to happen, regardless of what we do. Um, Hopefully, though, if we act quickly enough, it won't get terrible. We are going to have to cope with climate migration. It's already occurring now. And unfortunately, what's happening at the border with Mexico is a test case of what's going to happen when the migrant numbers become even more. We get more migrants. We have to come up with plans to help them so that they don't have to migrate. And then when they do migrate, how to help them find some stable way of living.
Yeah, I think completely new ways need to be created because right now we're not even helping communities in California that were burned out, to have a place that they can go to stay together as a community, to be near people they know and near their families. They're just when the disaster hits them, they're separated. They have everyone runs to wherever they can go for help instead of maybe we should build towns that people can evacuate and move into. I don't know. I mean, we need ideas like that. We need new ideas because we're having a lot of people who've had to suffer and carry lifelong trauma because of that.
Yeah, there's stories that I have read and listened to on the radio about the people that were dislocated in California because of the fires. And then you take the droughts in
Mm-hmm.
uh, Africa and India and the rising temperatures. And it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of times it's frightening. And because we know it's going to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
And we should use our brains. We're the intelligent species on this planet, in the universe, maybe. Let's use our brains to solve these problems, not just stick our heads in the sand.
Yeah, and it's always easier to tear things down and criticize them than it is to create and build things up. And, there's all these people standing at the sidelines going, that's not going to work. Oh, that won't work whenever anybody has ideas, But we do need new ideas. We need new ways to address a situation that humanity has never faced before. We've never lived under 424 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's a whole new world.
It absolutely is. And again, talking about it and because I mean, so many people that I just friends or people I retired with, let's say we go to a party of retirees and somebody will say, well, yeah, yeah, it's getting warmer. I'll give you that, but we really don't know why. And I'm like, yeah, we do. It's us. We're doing this by burning fossil fuels. And one of the things that really annoys me is the lies that the fossil fuel industry continues to tell the public. It's just absolutely unconscionable. I hope that our legal system will hold them accountable because they caused the problem. They knew they were causing the problem. They know they are continuing to cause the problem, and they are continuing to lie to us. And there was a debate during one of our meetings. Do we work with the fossil fuel industry or are we at war with them?
Hmm.
And a session at Case Western Reserve, oil executives never in an hour and a half, never mentioned climate change, And then somebody said, well, what about these industries that are trying to take a share of your market? And the comment was, bring it on. And it was total denial of the problems they were causing, and they were going to fight attempts to take their market share of energy, which no recognition that burning fossil fuels was causing the sixth great extinction is just unbelievable.
So are you saying they were looking at alternative energy as a competition for market share? Is that?
Absolutely. Yeah, they were there to encourage students to get jobs in the fossil fuel industry.
Hmm.
And, these are people who were making, seven-figure incomes.
Mhm.
And I believe me, I understand fossil fuels have allowed mankind to advance greatly. I mean, we wouldn't have the standard of living today without fossil fuels. But we also had learned that it's a major problem. And we developed technologies to avoid those problems. But unfortunately, the entrenched fossil fuel industry is fighting those new technologies and lying to us at the same time.
Hmm. So it sounds like their attitude is that it's a game. It's kind of just a competition and a game, which is a strange, I guess, a business attitude. But how do we get through to them? How do we get through to their hearts? How do we make the Grinch's heart grow 3 sizes?
I wish I had a real clear answer to that. Personal stories might enter into it. I mean, these are human beings. I mean, they have to have families and concerns. And the one thing is, people with a lot of money, they can avoid some of the problems. I mean, the migration to them is no problem. They probably have a house in the Bahamas and another house in France. And, well, if the Bahamas flood, we'll just move to France. Well, not everybody has that capability. And they just have to understand what is happening.
Right. And they can live very insular lives too, behind gates. They don't have to see the suffering that they're causing. But okay, I had this idea. Have you ever heard of 6 degrees? 6 degrees is where, you have 6 degrees of separation between any two people in the world. It's sort of an idea that I don't know if it's true or not, but the idea that if I wanted to, get a message put into the hands of someone, that I could put it out to my community, and someone would know someone who would know someone who could do that. Well, I want that idea. I want that done with these hard-hearted executives like Kelsey Warren of Energy Transfer Partners, who didn't care anything about the Standing Rock concerns at all. And I want someone close to that person, like a minister or his mother, or someone to take his hands and talk into his eyes and tell him from the heart that what he's doing is wrong.
Well, if you have some way of doing that, I mentioned that we had a quote virtual fly-in with Senator Portman's office. Unfortunately, we did not speak directly to Senator Portman. It was somebody in his office, and she had her camera turned off. I mean, she could see us, but we could not see her. So I guess she could see our eyes and understand our passion.
Mm.
And we had 4 members that told our stories about how climate change is affecting our lives, including houses falling into Lake Erie, fires in Colorado and California. Those stories hopefully hit home with people. I think the younger generation, they're seeing what's going on. And my involvement with the Arthur Holden Leadership Institute, which is a YMCA organization that works with high school students, eighth graders, seventh and eighth graders in three schools in this area. I mean, just talking with them, and then they can go home and talk with their parents and hopefully get some of these personal stories. I mean, the personal stories that my wife and I share. We have the Arthur Holden Leadership Students, and we have three groups of 30 visit the house. We talk about how we have electrified the house, wind turbines, solar panels, electric transportation, blah, 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 heat pumps. And we have some fun. We make some apple cider. And so it introduces them, if they haven't been introduced, to activities in nature. You know, they can see our garden, they can uh, pick grapes that are growing here and pick some apples and make some cider. And we can open up the conversation about climate change. The teachers that bring these students are teaching climate change. They're not getting the fossil fuel lies and the books and that kind of thing that says, there's no problem. They are teaching these students that, yes, there is a problem. And we adults who are giving the tour are wanting you to know there's a problem, and we are wanting to help you solve it, because the rest of your life is going to be involved with coping with and trying to solve the climate change issues.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's wonderful. What grade or age are those students?
Those are seventh and eighth grade. The Montessori schools are more like 11th and 12th grades. And it's been interesting to see the difference in maturity, if you will, but they're all very impressive. Seventh and eighth graders today, and I've been doing this for 10 years, and 10 years ago, most of the seventh and eighth graders didn't really know a lot about climate change.
Hmm.
Now you ask them questions about, what's causing it, and you get answers now. They know what's going on.
That's wonderful. That's really necessary. And it's great that they can come visit the house and see that, this house is your house carbon neutral or carbon? It, are you off gas entirely?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
we are totally electric. And that goes where our transportation. I sold my Volkswagen diesel about 6 months ago. So we are totally electric transportation. I do have a Kubota tractor for some of the gardening, but beyond that, I have all of the lawnmowers and the tillers and snow blowers. Everything is electric now.
Mm-hmm. And then is your source of electricity from wind, or how do
I
you?
have I have a wind turbine, and I have 14 kilowatt of solar panels. So last summer last summer I had a negative $270 bill. Now I've because we heat with geothermal, I've used up that banked amount of money, if you will. And so now I'm paying maybe $150 a month for the winter heating season. But next summer, I'll be getting negative bills again. So it's close to, I'm close to generating all the electricity we use. And our house is not like super insulated.
Mhm.
We use the standard washer and dryer, refrigerator, freezers, and all that.
Hmm.
So
Because insulation is a big one. I know that it's one of the ones that in the En-ROADS Climate Solution Simulator, energy efficiency and insulation falls under there is pretty important, is one of the big levers. But what I wanted to ask you, let's see. So, but from the grid, were you able to choose a renewable source of energy?
yeah, we're still connected to the grid. And well, when we first, I started putting solar panels up in the wind turbine in 2005. And then as we got rid of the propane and replaced it with geothermal, I added more solar panels. So I've got four arrays of solar panels, and progressed from 2005 until recently. Now, we put up our last solar panels just last year. So it's been a progression. The nice thing today, you can buy solar panels that are maybe 380 watts. My first solar panels were 150 watts. So they take up a lot of the roof area. And that 150 watt panel cost $4 a watt. Today, it's 50 cents a watt. I mean, the cost of going solar is way down. And 7 to 10 year payback is not at all unusual. Of the things that we have done to electrify the house, I would put solar panels at the top of the list, and electrifying your car, your transportation, probably second. Well, no, heating your home, that would be second. Third would be the car.
Okay. And how about air conditioning? How does that work?
Well, the heat pump, it's a geothermal heat pump, and it does air conditioning, heating, and hot water. So it's all in one package, if you will. And I've been looking at, I have my parents' farm up in Michigan, and I've been considering putting some type of heat pump on. Mini split would probably be the least expensive, and I could do it myself. And then geothermal is another option. It costs more, but it's more efficient. I won't bore you with the details of how heat pumps work and how you can save money with them, but that's a big factor in the Inflation Reduction Act, taking advantage of heat pumps.
But this is what I want the community groups to do. I really think, not everyone can afford. When I had a quote for solar, I couldn't afford it, unless I could figure out a way to do it, DIY more of it. But but as community groups networking together, we could insulate each other's houses, or, help in other ways, hopefully.
Well, there's something called community solar, and there's a bill, I think it's House Bill 197, that will fund putting in solar panels for communities. And then people that can't put solar panels on their house or can't afford to put solar panels on their house can basically get their electricity from this community solar system. And they'll save money, and there's no big upfront cost. There are installers that basically will loan you the money. And we checked when my neighbor was looking into it, we checked into that. And fortunately, he had enough where he did not have to borrow the money from them. And I want to caution people about greenwashing and the need to get multiple quotes from people, because there are organizations out there that basically they want to get as much money out of your wallet as they can. And I've looked at quotes that result in 20-year payback. That's not good enough. A 10-year, if you're not looking at a 10-year payback, talk with some other vendor, try and get a different quote. There's a lot of vendors out there now. I mean, in 2005, there almost nobody was installing solar panels out here. And the company that helped me install the system here, they're no longer in business. And but there are a lot of good installers. And don't just go with one quote, and be cautious.
Okay. Yeah, I had a quote that was really high, and it just sort of discouraged me, and I thought, oh, I can't afford this. So I'll look for more. Well,
I would encourage you to get a different quote.
yeah. So let's see. So if you were to tell people, or is there anything else you'd like people to know? If you were to tell people something to help them maybe take their place in this great movement we have that's addressing a very serious issue for our world, what would you tell them?
I guess the first thing is talk about it. I'm still uncomfortable if I go to a party and a lot of friends I might know for 30, 40 years. Um, Sometimes it's very comfortable talking about it, and other times it's not. And I guess I've come to the conclusion that even when I'm not comfortable talking about it, it still has to be talked about. It's just, we can't stick our heads in the sand. And willful ignorance is a term I'm sure you've heard. People who should know better just ignore what's going on, and we can't. It's to our detriment. And like I said earlier, if we are the intelligent species on this planet, let's use our brains and solve this problem, or at least mitigate it to the point where we're not going to cause mass extinctions.
Mhm.
Let's
Absolutely.
see. One of your questions dealt with how do you deal with climate deniers? And I was on a Zoom. It was hosted by the Sierra Club, and the person was asked. The person giving a presentation was asked, "How do you deal with deniers?" And she basically said, if they're strong deniers, don't waste your time. You're not going to convince them with science. They're not going to care about your stories. So put your efforts into other people who are more willing to understand the message and take action. So unfortunately, there are deniers out there that you're just not going to steer them. I was asked to review a video from a denier, and I reviewed it. I took 6 hours to address 14 false claims. I sent that to the person asking me to do it within 10 minutes. He came back with more criticisms. He wasn't even looking at the answers. He wasn't looking at the science. He didn't want to hear the science. So I wasted 6 hours. Just it didn't help.
Can I see that video?
Yeah, I could. It's probably been about 5 years ago, but I can probably dig it up.
I
I
can
mean, basically,
put
the
it
the
on my
guy
podcast. You
looked
put
at
it on my
it saying, "Well, if you step back far enough, there is no climate change, or it's happened before." And yeah, but you step back far enough, and Earth becomes insignificant. It's a grain of sand. But that's not a way of solving climate change on Earth where we live.
Right. And in the time frame we live in a very small little bubble of time compared to the Earth's time frame.
By the way, you had also asked about moment I saw the picture of climate change, where I felt I understood it. It's been a slow progression. I joined Green Energy Ohio in 1999, and I've been studying books and videos and things for years. And then I saw An Inconvenient Truth. I think it came out in '06. I thought saw it in '07. I had some issues with it, but it kind of pushed me toward a better understanding. And then I watched it's a book or a video called Earth, the Operator's Manual. And the great thing about it is it talks about causes and solutions. And then the final thing, I mean, there are many things I could recommend, but these three things: An Inconvenient Tooth, Earth the Operator's Manual, and there's a Ohio State University fact sheet by Thomas Blaine. And he describes, I mean, so many people say, well, the climate is changing, but it's always changed.
Mhm,
It's just natural.
mhm.
Well, Thomas shows you the natural causes of climate change going back millions of years. And then he shows how humans are causing climate change today. And he's got some YouTube videos. If you Google Thomas Blaine on the YouTube site, he's got some really good videos.
Thank you. So, so when those were the influences that kind of woke you up to the seriousness and urgency of this.
Yes.
Mhm, mhm. And then, so when you're first aware, did you have that feeling that I did of like, now I'm aware, now what do I do? I casting about what's happening? What are people doing? Where are we in all this? It's kind of like getting your bearings in a new place.
Well, I guess my view was I'm going to solve my contribution,
Mm,
technology. I'm going to put on solar panels, wind turbines, get, electrify. And I'm going to talk with people because they're going to understand and they're going to do it too. And that's probably the, the good part of addressing climate change and the bad part. And that is some people do understand it and they are taking action. I have friends who are putting in heat pumps and putting on solar panels and buying electric cars, and it's really great. But I also have friends that just they don't get it. They don't want to get it. They don't want to change.
mm,
Um, how we get through to those people, I'm not sure. Some people say, well, if there was just one event that you really scared people. And I'm like, look at the news. There's events every day.
mm,
There's thousands of people migrating and dying. And so, I mean, what more does it take to convince people that it's real?
mm. I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, those things are important to know because it wakes you up. But on the other hand, people run away and just want to play their games on their phone because they're so scared. They just want to escape.
Well, again, that's where what you're doing, getting people to talk about it, making them more comfortable talking about it, I think is critical.
Mhm.
It's just critical.
I will say, once you become known as the climate person, then it's easier because they know, oh, anything they mention, now they know Karen's gonna attach that to climate change somehow. She's gonna show how it relates to climate change. She's gonna bring it up no matter what.
Yeah. I love it. Somebody will call up and say, I was driving by a wind turbine and it's not turning. Why isn't it turning? Well, I really don't know, but you thought of me, saw the wind turbine.
Yeah. Or the other thing, when you become you're known that, I care about this so much now. So now everyone sends me things all the time, like, oh, what do you think of this meme? And
Yeah.
and here's some information you probably didn't know yet. And I'm like inundated with articles and memes that people, or it'll be like a sort of denier or climate critical article or claim, and then they'll send it to me because they want me to answer it for them. They want me to answer the other person.
Yes. Yes. I have a friend who has some who is denying climate change. How do you answer? I can't answer his question. And sometimes it's like, you asked me that question 6 months ago. Why don't you answer him yourself? Kind of thing.
Yeah,
But just keep it going.
right. I find if people don't I think it's really helpful to just try to get very clear with them. Like, what exactly is it that you're asking, and what exactly is it that they don't understand? And try to find exactly where that point is that information that they're lacking. And sometimes that makes all the difference. And like you said, there's some, of course, hardcore deniers, and a lot of times they have a political agenda. They have a reason they don't want to listen to the science. But there's a whole range of people who really don't know still. I'm with Greta Thunberg. There's a whole bunch of people that still don't know. Even though it's around us, even though it's, in the news. I had somebody yesterday ask me, what are fossil fuels? What do
Oh,
what do I mean by fossil fuels?
yeah.
She was
Yeah,
a
I had somebody
she was a
ask.
she was a young woman in her late 20s. And just to clarify, it's coal, oil, and gas. And these are fuels that were created millions of years ago by dying plants that went down and got all compressed into sludgy slush that became almost pure carbon. And that is what we now harvest as our coal, oil, and gas. And is that a good explanation? I don't know. You might be more expert than me. Is that a good description?
You don't have to get more scientific than that. I mean, it's old plants that have been buried for millions of years,
Mhm.
and we're pulling them up and converting them to carbon dioxide and sticking them in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I mean, people say, "Oh, it's so complicated," and I'm like, "No, it's not complicated. We know, we've known since the late 1800s that carbon dioxide traps heat. And when we keep putting more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it's going to trap more heat. It's pretty simple, pretty, and has been known for hundreds of years. Well, 100 years.
Right, right. No, I think Edith Foot was like 1750, wasn't she? No, I can't remember now. What year?
Yeah, he actually preceded Arrhenius, I believe was his name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was what was you said her name? A,
Edith Foot.
there was a female scientist that noted the carbon dioxide effect.
Yeah, Edith Foot, Foote.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been looking for that.
Oh, yeah. Very interesting. I mean, she did the math. She calculated how much it's going to increase the temperature of the planet. It's because that's something that people don't realize, that it's well known that the carbon dioxide molecule trapped heat. It was well known long before we talked about the greenhouse effect. We knew that
Yes.
that was an attribute of the carbon dioxide molecule. And yet you'll get denier claims that just outright say that's not true or something, even though it's been part of science for hundreds, over 100 years. Yeah,
Yeah, it's well. Um, and like I said, my engineering background, my background's in electrochemical engineering and also in oh a lot of work in laboratories, working with instruments that look at light, and a lot of the astronomers, Neil deGrasse Tyson, they look at light coming from space and they can tell you a lot about the planets and the suns that are generating or deflecting or reflecting these lights. And, there's a vast knowledge about looking at light and being able to tell what's going on millions of miles away. And I mean, Venus is the epitome of the hothouse effect or the greenhouse effect. And it's happening there, and we have learned a lot from Venus about what is happening here at Earth. Hopefully, Earth will never become like Venus. What I have read says that we won't, regardless of what humans do. I hope that's the case.
I hope so too. Do you have a good explanation for people when they ask about why does the sunlight get through, but the heat gets trapped? Like the difference, I guess, between the wavelengths, light and heat. But do you have a good way to explain that?
Well, ultraviolet light is a longer wave.
Mm,
The molecules, like carbon dioxide, which are triatomic, there's three atoms. They do not interact with the ultraviolet light. So the ultraviolet light comes through the atmosphere, basically unaffected by the atmosphere. But when it hits the Earth, it warms the Earth, and then the Earth tries to get rid of that heat with infrared, which is a shorter wavelength. And those wavelengths interact with the triatomic molecules and well, the methane, which would be four atoms. Three and four atoms, they have a lot of motion in between the different atoms, and these wavelengths that are trying to get out, they get absorbed by these atoms. They don't get absorbed by diatomic molecules like nitrogen and oxygen. They don't interact. And so you take a molecule of carbon dioxide, it absorbs this infrared and it re-radiates the infrared. Some of it goes into outer space, but some of it goes back to Earth. And that's why the higher the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the more you get reflected heat back to Earth, and it gets retained, it gets trapped.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that's great. I'm going to use that in my next class. So, I'm running a class for adults at the Climate Literacy Certificate course for adult public library patrons. So adults are coming and learning some of the basics of climate science, so they'll have that foundation and not be able to be misled.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah, another member of Climate Reality Project and I are talking to master gardeners next Tuesday, and she's going to be presenting the impacts of climate change. And I'm going to be presenting ways of overcoming it and focusing on electrification. And so I think the fortunate thing is I get to talk with people my age, and I get to talk with students once in a while. So it's good to get feedback from a full range. By the way, I wanted to mention um, one of one of the big things that motivates me in our fight against climate change is my daughter Cassandra is co-chair of NEOCRP with me, and she's a force to reckon with, if you will. She's getting a PhD degree, and her thesis is related to humanities and climate change and equitable treatment of people in this fight against climate change. And she inspires me.
I'll have her on here too. Yeah, I know her. I was her mentor when she went through climate reality.
Well, then you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, she's wonderful and a very good speaker too. And so smart. Yeah. And I love it that you guys are a team, and a lot of what you do, you both are a team in this work. That's marvelous for a family. Yeah. So, yeah,
I,
I just wanted to thank you for coming today and for sharing everything you did. I think it's really important for people to hear that there are so many people doing so many different things on so many different levels, from the personal to the political to the community and you're doing some with the education with schools, and the gardening club you said, or it's all so important. And I think that that's my hope, that these conversations will spread and will just flower everywhere, and people will say, oh, wow, now the consciousness is everywhere all at once.
no, I thank you for asking me to do this. For the fifth time, probably. Communication is critical, and you're doing a great job of communicating. And thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Dick, for coming. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Climate Agents, Agents of Change.
Oh,
There we go.
turn the camera off.
Yeah, I'm off. It's not recording now. I really would like to have another time to ask you more about the science like that. You give really clear explanations. Because the other thing people asked me at the last class was something about at the very edge of the atmosphere, how the molecule, like some things get out into space, but I guess not enough or something. Like, is Earth
Well,
losing its atmosphere little by little?
yeah, there's an inconsequential loss of hydrogen and probably other molecules, other atoms to space.
Hmm.
Fortunately, our gravity keeps enough atmosphere here to keep us alive,
Mm.
unlike Mars that got blasted away.
Mm.
Uh,
I get
yeah,
it.
there's an awful lot of science that I find really intriguing. And And I mean, the data from NASA and NOAA and how they understand the surface is getting warmer, but the outer atmosphere is getting colder. And why is that? Well, because the heat is being trapped at the Earth and it's not getting to the outer edges. If it were to get to the outer edges, it would radiate the heat and Earth would be in balance, like it was when we had 380 parts per million carbon dioxide.
Wait, do you mind if I turn the recording back on and you explain that again? I'm not sure I got that. I'm going to turn it back on. Record.
Um, no, I don't mind.
Yeah. So tell me again about we were talking about the atmosphere. I asked you, is Earth losing its atmosphere little by little?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about actually losing molecules from the atmosphere. I have read that there's some hydrogen that is lost, but the one point that I wanted to make was NASA and the temperature data throughout the atmosphere shows that the temperatures at the Earth are going up, while temperatures at the edge of the atmosphere are going down. And that is simple. It's because the heat is being held at the Earth. The carbon dioxide is reflecting that heat back down to Earth instead of letting it get to the outer edge of the atmosphere where it can dissipate that heat to space. And that's why we're in an imbalance. It's a carbon imbalance in the atmosphere.
Hmm.
When we were at 380 parts per million, and we were at a quote steady state, in other words, the temperatures weren't going up and down, the temperature gradient throughout the atmosphere allowed the outer atmosphere to be warmer and allowed that heat to be dissipated into space. But now we throw 420 parts per million carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it holds that heat down to the Earth, which cools the outer edge of the atmosphere.
That makes sense. Now I
Yeah.
get it. And also the idea of the energy balance makes sense now because the the light from the sun is energy that's coming in, and then it's warming the surfaces of the planet, which then radiate heat, but that's also energy just in the form of heat. And then that energy is being trapped instead of escaping, which is disrupting our balance. So you're saying we used to have, I guess, what, the same amount going in and coming out?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. And it's only a matter of about 3 or 4 watts per square meter on Earth. I mean, it sounds like an inconsequential number, but we have such a large area and we have time. So you absorb 3 watts per square meter over how many square meters there are on Earth over 100 years. And it's huge.
Oh, okay. This is great. This is a great way to, I mean, I like the way you're explaining this. I think this will be really useful for my curriculum too. Because these questions come up, and a lot of times because I'm not a scientific expert. I've studied things and then I explain them, but then people ask me questions that I don't know the exact answers. I have to say, I got to research that.
Have you watched Earth, the Operator's Manual?
Uh, I thought you said it was a book. No, I haven't seen it.
It
It's
is
a
a
video?
video. It was PBS put it out,
Hmm.
and it's really good.
Okay.
I highly recommend finding it on YouTube or wherever you can and watching it because again, it like what I just described is 3 watts being withheld. There's a great graphic where the author is holding out his arms and he's creating a 1 square meter uh, uh, surface in like the Sahara Desert. And
Hmm.
he's showing, well, the amount of sunlight hitting that is like 400 watts.
Hmm.
And that's enough to light 4 100 watt light bulbs, right?
Hmm.
That, but and all of that heat gets dissipated into space, except for about 4 watts, 3 or 4 watts. And that's the crux of climate change. That's why we are warming.
Hmm.
He does an excellent job. I really recommend you find it. Actually, I'll see if I can find a link and send it to you.
So those percentages, and that's why, the denier claim and the Heritage Foundation, they all put out these silly these silly memes that they want people to spread around. But the idea that, oh, it's such a tiny amount that it doesn't matter, it's carbon dioxide, just a tiny amount of our atmosphere, or it's just such a tiny amount of difference in the energy balance. But we can see the effects are not small.
No. What does Al Gore say? 100,000 Hiroshima bombs a day?
Oh my goodness,
Some crazy number. It's just unbelievable.
that much.
And as far as the Heritage Foundation, they're the worst. I mean, I've listened to their quote scientific experts, and what I do is I take the name of the quote, the scientific expert, and I do a debunk.
Hmm.
And there are people who take their arguments and just blow them out of the water.
Hmm.
There's one that was supposed to be a advisor to the Queen of England. And it turns out it was a
Lord
bunch of,
Monkton.
yeah, Lord Monckton.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a whole series debunking his talks at the Heritage Foundation. And I mean, he misquotes people. He totally lies.
Hmm.
It's just unbelievable what people will do.
But he sounds so authoritative with that British accent. How can we
Oh,
not trust that?
yeah, you talk about. I have talked about the roller coaster. I get hope, and then I watched. I was laying in bed and I was watching his presentation, and I'm like, I went to sleep, and I'm like, oh man, NASA is all wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. This guy just blew them out of the water. And
Hmm.
I get up next morning and I say, debunk Lord Fauntleroy or whatever his name is.
Lord Monkton.
Thank you. I'm sorry. And there's a guy who's got like 10 videos addressing each of the points that Monkton is denying.
Are you
And
talking
he
about
just
Potholer 54, which is Peter Hadfield?
exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he's wonderful. He's interesting though. I mean, he's really good at those videos, but he's also a very strong free market, kind of conservative politically, which I find fascinating that he hasn't made the connection yet between his politics that is that is fueling the climate crisis. But anyway, yeah, Potholer 54 is the YouTube channel, and his name is Peter Hadfield, and he's a science writer. So he's not a climate scientist himself, but he's been a climate science writer for so long that he's excellent at, tracking down the original studies that these people are misrepresenting and misquoting.
Yeah. Yeah, he shows the original and then he shows how they modified it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's, he's good. I did not know he was a market guy.
Yeah. And so
Go ahead.
the other interesting thing, John Cook created skepticalscience.com, and John Cook has a poster. He's a climate scientist as well as a cartoonist. So he's a very creative cartoonist. He created a poster that has 100 scientists on it, and they all have their hands in the air, yes. And three of them have their hands crossed, no. And so he's showing the 97% of every 100 scientists agree that humans are causing climate change. So AGW, anthropogenic global warming, AGW, they would agree with that. And or they support that. They know that it's happening. And the three that have their arms crossed and are, opposing, they're all well-known deniers like that, like Monkton and Fred Singer and Richard Lindzen. I can't remember. Oh, John Christie. So three of those are the ones on the poster. So it's not just any scientists that disagree, but it's certain scientists who have a reason, maybe a very comfortable amount of greenbacks as a reason.
You probably heard of Willie Soon.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, um, I used to fish with a group, and one of the gentlemen I used to fish with sent me a video that Willie Soon and another gentleman put together. And the quote that just blew me away, it's the sun. It's the sun causing the warming. And like it's not man, it's the sun.
Yeah.
And then find out that Willie was paid, a few 100,000 to deny climate change by Exxon.
I know. Yeah. Well, I guess we better wrap up. I think this is so long that I'm going to break it into parts. I'll do smaller sections of this. But I really want to thank you for coming and thank you for sharing so much. It's really, really been a joy to be able to talk to you that finally, we were always in meetings usually.
Well, yeah, and I enjoyed your class on, come on, Brain, the the environmental model.
Oh, En-ROADS?
Roads, thank you. Yes, and roads. You do a good job with that too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll do that anywhere, anytime. Anytime. I've been doing more and more of them. So I'm getting even better. Um, anyway, thank you so much for all your work. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for the work that you do for the earth, for our dear shared planet Earth. It's really important, and it just warms my heart to know that there are good people like you who are dedicated and doing that work.
Uh, I reflect that back to you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and I want to thank all of you listening. Thank you for coming to Climate Agents, Agents of Change.